College is supposed to be the best years of your life. Late night study sessions, campus parties, and memories you'll never forget. But what if some people never left? Across the country, students and staff have reported strange whispers in empty classrooms, footsteps echoing down abandoned hallways, and ghostly figures roaming the dorms. Tonight, we're uncovering the most chilling hauntings on college campuses, so grab your flashlight because you might never look at your school the same way again. Keep it purely atmospheric. Great story. Very chilling. I went through carefully and polished up spelling, grammar, and readability while keeping your storytelling voice intact. Here's the corrected version. My mother went to Eastern Washington University and stayed in one of the houses that locals rented out to college students. I cannot give the exact age of the house, but it was old enough to have a built-in button on the floor that would call up to the servants in the attic, so the house was relatively old. During her studies, she had 3 different roommates. My uncle was the first, then he was replaced by my mother's best friend, who was later replaced by my father. All 3 of them can confirm strange happenings in this house, including being woken up in the middle of the night by people whispering. The worst of it was always in my mother's room in the attic. My mother hated that house, but she didn't have anywhere else to live, and the dorms were expensive, so she sucked it up and lived there until she graduated. She hated sleeping alone. The air in her room constantly felt thick and heavy. Her closet was always freezing cold, and at night she would hear multiple people whispering incoherently. While living there, my mother had a cat named Puss, who would constantly hide under the bed. One time, she caught Puss sitting out in the open, watching and growling at one of the corners of the room. My mother went over to see what she was looking at, then saw a black figure in the corner slowly move upward toward the ceiling. Puss grew more aggressive, hissing and growling, until she freaked out and shot back under the bed, still growling until the figure disappeared. My mother had never seen Puss act like that before, since she was normally a very loving, happy cat, but whatever that thing was, it clearly terrified her. Sometime later, my mother was talking with a friend who was excited to be touring 2 famous paranormal investigators around the college and town, showing them supposedly haunted places. My mother mentioned the strange things in her house, and her friend begged to bring them over. My mother refused, not wanting to stay up late for people she didn't even know. She also didn't know who they were at the time, only that they'd been on a lot of talk shows. The investigators turned out to be Ed and Lorraine Warren. Around midnight, my mother's best friend woke her up, saying there were people at the door. Confused, my mother threw on a robe and went to the front door. There stood her tour guide friend, 12 students, and Ed and Lorraine Warren. Lorraine asked if they could come in, saying they had heard her house might be haunted. My mother agreed. Lorraine asked where in the house the activity was most active. My mother told her it was in her bedroom, but only Ed and Lorraine could come with her. Everyone else had to stay. They agreed, and my mother led them to her room. Inside, she sat on her bed and asked if they could feel how heavy the air was. Ed and Lorraine agreed it felt like some of the haunted places they had visited before. Lorraine walked around the room, then toward the closet, and asked if my mother heard voices there. My mother broke down crying, saying she heard them every night and they kept her awake. Lorraine told her the closet might be a doorway for the dead, or even a doorway to hell. She then told my mother that what was happening might be connected to her family, that the women had some sort of psychic connection that attracted spirits. My mother told her about the black figure, and Lorraine said it wasn't from the house at all, but tied to her family, mainly her father's side. She explained it wasn't a ghost or demon, but something purely evil that had followed her grandfather, her father, and now her. Terrified, my mother asked them to bless her room, which they did, After investigating the house further, Ed and Lorraine told her it was the first place in the whole area where they actually found signs of true activity. Time passed, and my mom's best friend moved out while my dad moved in. The activity continued, even after the blessing. At first, my father was skeptical, until one night when he heard the whispering himself. He thought my mother was talking, but she wasn't. When she asked if he could hear it, he finally admitted he did. She told him it came from the closet, every night. Later, my father got curious about whether the servant's button still worked. No one had ever gone into the attic before. Both of my parents started up, but before they reached the top, they felt as though they couldn't breathe. The temperature dropped to freezing, and my mother panicked, saying she felt like she was being choked. She begged my father to turn around, and he did. They never went up there again. After graduation, my parents moved out, but strange events continued to follow them. When I was born, we lived in a small house with my two older brothers. The cats constantly freaked out, hissing at corners, and my mother still saw the black figure. Later, when we moved into a newly built house, things got even worse. When I was about 5, I was walking from my room toward the stairs when I suddenly felt someone grab my arm roughly. I turned and saw a black figure holding me. I screamed for my mother. She ran upstairs, saw the figure, and tried to pull me away. The figure wouldn't let go until she yanked hard and tore me free. It vanished, but a huge handprint was left on my arm. My mother rushed us out of the house and demanded my father call a priest. The house was blessed, and after that, the activity stopped. Still, growing up, my brother and I had nightmares of this figure. In our dreams, it had bright red eyes and chased us, doing terrible things. Nothing else has happened since, but I still live in that house, and sometimes I get sudden fear at the staircase. I never go downstairs at night without the lights on. My mother avoids talking about it, believing speaking of it gives it power. She once told me she brought it up with my grandfather, her father, and he went pale. He admitted the figure had tormented him as a child, and that his own father had warned him about it. My mother didn't realize until much later that the investigators were Ed and Lorraine Warren. We were watching a documentary when she pointed them out. I was shocked and told her they were among the most famous paranormal investigators in the world, with horror movies made about their cases. My mother freaked out, told my father, and while he was surprised, he didn't dwell on it. I apologize if my story is a little scattered, but this is the best way I can share my mother's experiences and my own, since she doesn't like to talk about it out of fear it will come back. I'm thoroughly convinced schools and college campuses are haunted, and I'm fascinated by who or what spirits might be lurking in the hallways. Why? Why is their soul trapped in an educational building? Who were they that they decided to attach themselves to this institution? Here are 2 incidents that happened to me at the same location. I keep thinking about them, so I thought I'd share. I'm from a small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone's cousin. We don't have a lot of dark history in our town, but that doesn't stop eerie experiences from occurring. Back in 2009, during my senior year of high school, the school was holding an assembly in the morning for the graduating class. My friend and I just happened to be in a junior class study hall when the assembly was taking place. She and I asked the teacher if we could leave early and head to the auditorium. The teacher agreed, so we went to the main office, asked if we could sit in the auditorium, and waited for the rest of our class. The secretary at the front desk gave us permission and told us to be quiet. My friend and I picked some seats on the far end of the auditorium, propped up our feet, and listened to music on her MP3 player while we waited. A few songs later, I developed an unsettling feeling. Suddenly, I felt uncomfortable, just me and her in the dimly lit auditorium. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. My friend seemed lost in the music, so I didn't bring it up. Moments later, a shadow ran down the aisle at full sprint and disappeared straight into the stage. I froze, and I felt my friend tense up. I looked toward the doorway, curious if any light could have cast a shadow. But this was no ordinary shadow. It wasn't cast against the wall or at an angle. It was completely dimensional and looked like a boy, about 10 to 12 years old. Despite wanting to find a logical explanation, there was none. My friend was quiet. I said nothing. Even though it only lasted seconds, it felt like forever. Finally, I turned to her and asked, "Did you see that?" She replied, "You mean that shadow?" I nodded. "Yes." We quickly got up and left the auditorium, heading to the bathroom. While in there, we discussed it, agreeing it was 100% a shadow and not a reflection. We stayed in the bathroom until the senior class came down for the assembly. My friend and I never talked about it again, nor did we mention it to anyone. I never forgot that experience. And years later, another occurrence in the high school auditorium completely solidified my belief that it's haunted. Flash forward to 2014. I was fresh out of college and recently hired at the same high school I attended. It was summertime. Schools were vacant. That emptiness can give them an eerie feeling, especially if you're alone and the lights are dim. If you didn't know you were in a school, you might think you were in a prison or an abandoned hospital ward. Summers bring a lot of deliveries for the upcoming school year, and out of convenience, we stored them in the auditorium. I was alone, sorting through boxes and separating them for different classrooms, when I suddenly heard voices. A male and female were having a conversation, but it was muffled enough that I couldn't make out words, only tones. I quickly scanned the auditorium. No one. Curious, I walked down toward the stage to see if maybe a custodian and secretary were back there talking. The voices continued, neither fading nor growing louder as I approached. I went through a small corridor and checked behind the curtain. No one. I still heard the voices, but couldn't pinpoint where they were coming from. I made my way to the back of the auditorium where the sound equipment and computer were, thinking maybe something had switched on accidentally. Everything was off. No noise. What the heck? I thought. Then I got that same uneasy feeling, the same sensation I'd felt years before with my friend in that same auditorium. I decided to leave. Before stepping out, I turned back one last time and still heard the voices carrying on. Annoyed, I went to the main office. I asked the secretary if anyone was in the auditorium or if any crews were scheduled to work. Summer also brings maintenance and repairs, so I thought maybe a company was there. She didn't know of anyone and paged the head custodian. While we waited, she asked what was going on. I said, "There are people talking in the auditorium." She gave me a quizzical but knowing look. When the custodian arrived, he confirmed no crews were scheduled that day. The secretary smiled at him and said, "Tell him." I explained that I heard two people talking in the auditorium. He smirked and said, "Yep, I've had similar experiences too. Some of the other guys as well." "No way," I exclaimed. "Oh yeah," he said, "pretty sure it's haunted." He pulled out his phone, texted some coworkers, and soon a few more custodians joined us. We all shared our own ghost stories and experiences in the auditorium. "And the principal makes fun of me when I say I don't want to go in there alone," the secretary shouted. We laughed and tried to figure out who could be haunting the high school auditorium, but nothing significant had ever happened in town. One custodian added that he believed the other schools in the district were haunted too. Needless to say, any time I had to be in the auditorium, especially alone, I always brought a flashlight, my phone, and propped the door open.
Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.